I don't stand side by side with nobody till I bleed with them first.
What did we just see? You probably think this world is a dream come true.
When I step into this ring, yeah, bro, I am addicted.
Don't sleep on Luca!
Maybe tomorrow we'll all wear 42.
If you fight for your dreams will fight for you.
Kendrick Lamar is an American rapper who has been in this industry since the 2000s, but he really broke out during the 2010s, often regarded amongst the best and often regarded as the best of this generation. I'll say it right now, Kendrick is one of my favorite artists of all time. I bring it up here just like I did with Linkin Park so nobody starts talking about bias. It's music, man. At the end of the day, we all have our favorites and we're going to talk about some more highly than others. Obviously, we're all going to talk more highly, especially about the music that we enjoy. So I don't want to hear nothing when it comes to me talking about this amazing discography that this man has crafted. And it all starts with Section 80 is Kendrick Lamar's debut studio album, coming in 2011 at 15 songs, 54 minutes. The record starts off with F Your Ethnicity. This record would showcase from the start Kendrick Lamar's storytelling and concept building ability. This song really serves as a sort of soft start to the story of two characters. It serves as the exploring of issues that these two women are going through and also kind of acting on, or acting sort of as commentary on how race continues to divide. One thing I really enjoyed from the next song, Hold Up, is the inclusion of brass and soft drums in the production. Really gives it a soft, soulful feel that is kind of contrasted by its subject matter. ADHD explores the drug abuse and its common occurrence in the world and especially generation around Kendrick Lamar. He even touches on how they develop such a high tolerance at young ages that they start to pursue harder, more harmful drugs. Moving on to our next song, I don't know who Colin Monroe is, but his collab with Kendrick Lamar is a favorite of mine. A lot of people do not like this song, which really kind of confuses me. The song, of course, is No Makeup. I've seen a lot of hate on it. I see a lot of people saying it's Kendrick's worst song. I just can't see it. It's one of my favorite, collabs of Kendrick because both men come together to make this really soulful, somber song. And it's kind of what you would call a sibling song, as Keisha's song is meant to pair with it. This song touches on Kendrick Lamar encountering a prostitute who is in an abusive relationship and how she uses makeup to hide it. And Lamar and Monroe go back and forth singing and rapping about wanting to see her without that makeup, wanting, to see her true beauty behind the pain and also to let that truth be seen and exposed. We even kind of see Kendrick play off this story in one of his verses where you hear the woman, trying to say stuff and there's Kendrick interrupting, finishing the sentences, sort of preventing her from getting that truth out, playing the role of the abuser in this sense, just a debut studio record for Kendrick Lamar, and he's already showing his storytelling prowess that would be a staple for his entire career. However, one thing we see also from the very beginning is a point that Kendrick has kind of been trying to get through everybody's head for the longest. By this, I mean we go to Poe Man's Dream, and he says don't call him lyrical, and it also sees him say that he's trying to get people to recognize that Kendrick Lamar is just a man. He mentions wanting people to walk in his shoes to see his story, and music is his way of showing that. He wants to show people the life he's lived, where he came from, and really how it shaped him into who he is today. In chapter 10, he even mentions, leaving it all on the table, showing your pain. And the whole showing your pain thing coincides with the story at hand as we get to Keisha's song and learn more about one of our characters. It follows the story of the prostitute, and in this song, Kendrick mentions writing this song and then showing it to his sister. But I love and really want to mention this genius annotation where someone said, he is indeed telling her not to become a prostitute through vivid imagery, but it is in an effort to help her, he is indeed telling her not to become a prostitute through vivid imagery, but it is in an effort to help her develop her understanding of why women do such things. He's not demonizing prostitutes, he is merely pointing out that it is a profession that damages people. He wants his sister to see the woman behind every prostitute. Kendrick wants people to see the humanity behind decisions. Every decision made has a whole line of story and other decisions that led to this point. You may look at a prostitute in disgust for their career choice, but you may not know the circumstances that led there or what is keeping them there. For all you know, they were forced in at a young age and potentially are still being forced to stay. I really love this approach from Kendrick because it very much coincides with the way I look at music, especially when it comes to rap music. The artists are often at an unfair disadvantage. Their lyrics are always taken at face value, and often the people that do that are missing the point. They're missing the bigger picture of the music at times. It's especially visible when you look at Kendrick's whole career, and we're gonna see that as more we progress, but the way I've always put it is there are people who just listen to music, paying no mind to the lyrics, which again, there's nothing wrong with listening to music for pure entertainment. At the end of the day, that's what music is always going to be, is entertainment. But then there's also those that read the lyrics, but they read them at face value. They read them, they understand it, they understand what's being said, but they look at it at face value. And then there's those that just look into it deeper. They look at the context of the artist, they look at the overall meaning of the song. I'll explore this deeper with future Kendrick songs, but that is something to keep in mind, and that's why I said, especially when it comes to the genre of rap, a lot of them are often at that disadvantage of people looking at their music as face value, and it's, in my opinion, it's just not the correct way to look at it. With a genre that's so closely tied to poetry, you really got to look deeper, really got to look at the context and really get the meaning of why they're portraying things, such as Keisha's song. Why is Kendrick choosing to portray this in this way? For Keisha's song, I want to mention that while writing this script, I learned that the feature artist Ash Reiser passed away in 2021. Didn't know much about him other than his feature here, so I just want to say rest in peace and thank him for his various contributions to Kendrick's work, such as this song. Just like Monroe with No Makeup, he just added a new element to the song, and his voice added to that somber tone. Can't really tell you much, his voice reminds me of someone, but I don't know who, but he really added so much to the song. I really enjoyed it. And then it's funny because after such a somber song, we immediately raised the pace of things with Rigor Mortis, and Rigor Mortis sees Kendrick kind of show his confident side, showcasing his wordplay, his flow, his lyricism, and kind of why it sets him apart from other rappers to the point that he kills them, basically, as he puts it. Cushion Corinthians sees Kendrick sort of battle with his morality. In one of his verses, Kendrick states, look at me, I'm a loser, I'm a winner, I'm good, I'm bad, I'm Christian, I'm a sinner, I'm humble, I'm loud, I'm righteous, I'm a killer. What I'm doing, I'm saying that I'm human, now people just ride to it." This song and the whole album kind of ties into the album cover. It is Kendrick, as well as others, struggling between morality and the world. Struggling to do right while still being tempted to do, bad. And the last line is that sort of realization of humans being imperfect. So writing that out is basically succumbing to the sin and temptation due to us being imperfect. And Kendrick, he acknowledges his faults, showing that when he does good, such as reading the Bible, he counteracts it by smoking, for example. Or his biggest struggle, trying to walk the path of good with a world that kind of surrounds him with the opposite. Ab-Soul's features Ab-Soul, one of Kendrick's closest friends and fellow artists from the TDE brand. Obviously, Kendrick's not with the TDE brand anymore, but the point of this song is Kendrick and Ab-Soul kind of clarifying the entire album. They're almost basically spelling it out to the audience that this is just their opinions in a way to, again, to those people who are looking at it as face value, this is their way of just being like, if you need it put straight to you, this is our way of putting it straight to you. This is just their views on the various topics and stories presented. Nowhere are they saying that they are correct, that you have to agree. It's just Kendrick basically saying what you're going to see him say throughout his entire career. And it's funny because he's often so misconstrued. His words are often so misconstrued, and he literally is blatantly saying it here. So the next time I talk about money, women, clothes, God, and history all in the same sentence, just know I meant it and you felt it because you too are searching for answers. I'm not the next pop star. I'm not the next socially aware rapper. I am a human being over dope instrumentation. Kendrick Lamar. He isn't some big celebrity. He isn't some profound philosopher. He's just a human being. And if you feel some type of way about the things he is saying, it's because you too are interested in the topics and discussion at hand. High Power closes the record off as a sort of soulful, empowering message. I really enjoy a lot of Kendrick's wordplay on this one, such as the line about how he doesn't sugarcoat anything compared to the rest who sugarcoat things too much that they die of diabetes from listening to them. Overall, great debut, one that really showed everything Kendrick was going to offer. He can give you hits, he can cover serious topics, he can tell a story, and he can speak his mind about the experiences that he has gone through in this life. Good Kid, M.A.A.d City is Kendrick Lamar's 2012 release, coming in at 13 songs, 1 hour and 13 minutes. The concept album details Kendrick Lamar's life in Compton as a teenager, and I gotta quickly mention it here and go off script a little. Look at the length, 13 songs, an hour 13. I know a lot of people who have heard my previous discography reviews, different previous videos on music. I complain about long albums, but it's always with song length. I want people to know that my issue is with not song length, with the amount of songs on an album. My issue is when we're getting albums that 25 tracks. What are we doing here? This is a perfect encapsulation of what I would want out of a long album. Less songs, but those songs are longer, because we're at 13 songs and it's an hour and 13. Obviously that's aided by skits and all that, but this is what I want. Anyways, getting back on track. Good Kid, M.A.A.d City opens up with Sherane, aka Master Splinter's daughter, which details Kendrick's relationship with a girl he met at a party. He gets to talking with her, learning about her life, trying to get closer and closer in hopes of advancing things. When she finally agrees, he takes his mother's van to greet her. However, when he arrives, Sherane is standing outside with two men in hoodies, likely the brothers that Kendrick had heard about. The song cuts there as we get a voicemail from Kendrick's mother asking where is he. She needs the van to go out to get some food stamps, and she even warns him, saying he better not be messing around with Sherane. Our next track is Don't Kill My Vibe, which plays into that previous message. But it also kind of serves as a break from the overall narrative. On this track, Kendrick goes into detail about his views on the music industry. He's kind of disappointed in the way other people approach music, such as focusing on a quick check and putting out music that really lacks substance. Another point Kendrick makes is, again, one that was mentioned in section 80 on the chorus he sings, I am a sinner who's probably going to sin again. Lord forgive me for the things I don't understand. Once again, we see Kendrick trying to push, the human narrative to the forefront. He is human like everyone else. He makes mistakes and he wants to strive to be better. He wants to strive to be better. And from that point, we move back to our narrative with another outro that sees Kendrick's friends picking him up. The one thing to understand about this album is that though there is a narrative, it isn't exactly told in chronological order. This outro transitions into Backseat Freestyle, a song that sees Kendrick have fun and, like the title suggests, give us a throwback to something he and his friends would do riding around Compton. The overall flow and topic of Kendrick's bars reflect his age, as he's more focused on witty bars, mundane topics, compared to now where we kind of see him sort of carefully pick what things he chooses to speak on. This then leads into the art of peer pressure, and this is kind of where we get another glimpse into the concept of the record. In the intro of the track, Kendrick calls the attention of all to hear his tale on his first encounter with peer pressure. The main encounter he seems to have is when it comes to alcohol and drugs. He himself prefers to stay sober, yet there are his friends pressuring him to try and join along. The song then kind of immediately sort of shifts into this more somber mood. Picture Kendrick telling this story, and when we get to his first voice, he lowers his voice a lot. His first verse, he lowers his voice a lot to really sell the seriousness of the situation. He details smoking, pressing people for the colors they wear, along with a ton of other actions that he only participated in due to peer pressure. He also details participating in a robbery that led to them fleeing the police. And while that happens, Kendrick's mother calls him and he lies, saying that he's just hanging out with his friends, he's not doing anything too crazy. In the outro, the group is hanging out and we hear them mention, Kendrick smoking and hoping that he doesn't get the one with shenanigans in it. We'll come back to that later. Money Trees sees Kendrick and another TDE member, J-Rock, one of, if not the biggest hit from this record. Kendrick sings about the pursuit of money, the dream of being shaded by money, a money tree, is sort of referencing the fact that they kind of believe money will solve their problems, and under the money tree they won't have to worry about much, However, it's Kendrick's life in Compton that reminds him that money can't heal all wounds. Money can't stop his uncle from being killed. Money can't take away the trauma that prevents him from returning to the burger place where he was killed. J-Rock's verse kind of continues that same message, discussing sort of all the things that might lead a person to turn towards the pursuit of money. Again, going back to that, message from Section 80 about thinking about what leads someone to make the decisions that they make, One of the things he mentions is drug dealing. However, they aren't doing it for the pursuit of money in a greedy sense. As J-Rock puts it, what else is a thug to do when you eating cheese from the government? Gotta provide for my daughter. He's not doing this stuff because he wants to. He's not telling people these experiences to glorify it. He's showing you everything he had to do just to simply make it in this life. And that's one of the things I have always loved when it comes to a lot of the TDE guys, the Black Hippie crew, whether it was Kendrick, J-Rock, Absol, Schoolboy Q. They just always kept it real about their struggles. Never once were they trying to glorify a lifestyle or struggle, especially trying to make it seem like, oh, if you don't go through the struggle, this and that, their main message was always, look at what we had to go through and the efforts we're putting in to make sure that the future generations don't have to do the exact same thing that we did, For them, it was the only way they could get by before this music stuff took off. And now they kind of want to create opportunities, options, so that others don't have to feel that this is the only way to get out of the struggle, that drug dealing and music are the only ways out, This is their way of trying to help create those opportunities, like I mentioned. The outro of Money Trees sees the return of Kendrick's mom. On the voicemail, she's extremely frustrated and just wants Kendrick to bring the car back. The ending skit of Poetic Justice as well brings us back to where we started, where Kendrick is approaching Shireen when the two hooded individuals stop him. They press him knowing that he's not from the area and try to get him out of the van. This transitions into one of my favorite songs off the record, Good Kid. On this track, Kendrick touches back on the peer pressure. In the opening verse, he talks about trying to cleanse his life of various influences, but they keep creeping their way back into his life. One of the biggest influences was obviously gang culture. Unlike others around him, Kendrick didn't really buy into the culture, thus sort of isolating him. He wanted to play it safe, be friends with, different people from different groups, but all it led to was questioning on whose side he was on. And he mentions getting attacked for being in the wrong hood, but he doesn't care because he knows one day he's going to make it out and do a lot for the same city that has forced them into this lifestyle. One of my favorite parts of the song is the chorus. Though very short, it kind of adds a lot to the song's meaning. On the chorus, I believe it's Pharrell, we hear him say mass hallucination, baby, ill education, baby, wanna reconnect with your relations, this is your station, baby. Essentially, this is Kendrick's way of reaching out to those that are just like him. Good kids that are stuck in bad situations that are influencing the way they think. To him and those kids, all they had were bad influences that affected the way they viewed things. They viewed gang culture and drug use / drug dealing as normal. They viewed, the stuff that would happen in their cities as normal. But to Kendrick, again, he is telling people his experiences in hopes that it can set people right and can, get them to continue on that right path rather than falling into those influences. The second verse sees the aftermath of the incident in the first verse. As Kendrick recovers, the cops come and he's thankful for their arrival in hopes that they can help him. And for a bit, they are helpful until they put him in handcuffs and begin to harass him. As Kendrick puts it, despite being a good kid, they still profile him. Despite his young age, they still assume that he's somehow gang affiliated. So, despite being a kid that is trying to break those barriers and escape the bad influences of Compton, he's still treated like others due to association. And the one thing that I kind of like about the end of this verse is Kendrick switching up the line. He says they will never respect a good kid in a mad city. To him, he could make it out of Compton and become successful, but that still won't change the way people view him. Because of the music he makes, and again, how often people misinterpret it, they still view him as this thug. They misconstrue his lyrics and interpret it as glorifying these actions of drugs, alcohol, gang violence, hatred for the police, when again, all Kendrick is doing is speaking about his personal experiences. He's telling you about the gang violence he experienced, not to glorify it, but to show people how it negatively impacted him. And again, also to motivate, himself and others to pursue other options that, might offer hope to those still stuck in the city. He talks about his experiences with the police to show that even innocent people are often caught in the crossfire. This, again, is one of my favorite songs on the record. It's one of my favorite sort of benchmark songs because it really helps me determine if, again, shouting out one of my favorite rap, one of my favorite rap duos of all time, Outkast. Are you actually listening to the lyrics, or you just want to dance? Are you hearing what Andre's saying, or you just want to dance? And similarly here, are you just reading the lyrics, or are you actually understanding and comprehending the points that Kendrick is trying to make here? And this same point is going to be seen a whole lot more in the rest of Kendrick's discography. And of course, I love the ending of the third verse. Kendrick looks back on all of this and he's thankful because of all these struggles. The city of Compton paid him back with a music career. He was able to become big off of his music of being truthful and insightful about the struggles he went through. And in turn, he's paying the city back by inspiring the next generation and using his wealth in hopes to spark change. Also, I know I haven't been speaking on the music a lot, and that's just because the absolute density of these songs, especially with their lyrical content. But I will say for this one, that somber, softer sound of the song, it just works so well. It's so good. I really enjoyed the flow and vocal style that Kendrick decides to use on this song. That is, I wouldn't say underrated or even underappreciated, but it's one of those details that, sometimes gets overlooked with Kendrick. Is just his various vocal styles, just the thought process and, just the consideration of which one is he going to use, how is he going to manipulate his voice to, fit whatever theme he's trying. Really great stuff from him. And this is all immediately counteracted by the next song and part, M.A.A.d City. M.A.A.d City is a different pace right away. M.A.A.d City has two different meanings. As far as, looking at the mad part, it's either my angels on angel dust or my angry adolescents divided. Both relate to the experiences that Kendrick's had. The latter, of course, relates to Kendrick's adolescence being divided between trying to be a good kid and buying into the influences around him. However, the former is in relation to a skit from earlier. Remember earlier? Mentioned Kendrick's friends were smoking. They peer pressured him into smoking, and they mentioned hoping he didn't get into the one with shenanigans. Well, it turns out he ended up smoking the blunt that was laced. As Kendrick says on this song, cocaine laced in marijuana, and they wonder why I rarely smoke now. Imagine if your first blunt had you foaming at the mouth. Another thing I really enjoy about this song is the beat switch. Kendrick and MC just really did well with this song. The latter's deeper voice fitting so well. Our ending skit once again helps set up our next song. It sees Kendrick meet up with his friends after the incident with the two men and the cops. They offer him alcohol to relax, and that leads to our next song, Swimming Pools. Another song where at face value, a lot of people misinterpret it. They look at it as glorifying drinking, but again, deeper than the surface level people, we gotta look. It shouldn't be that hard, but apparently it is for some people. And I know a lot of people are going to hear me saying this and they're gonna be like, oh, there aren't people out there that view this song that way. They don't view it that way. You're just making up someone in your mind. But trust me, you would not believe the people I have encountered that will blatantly misinterpret songs and ignorantly write stuff about songs and ignorantly write songs like this off, you know. Very frustrating. But getting into it, if you listen to the actual song, you see that Kendrick is once again talking about peer pressure and how many times his conscience tries to help him through it. Kendrick talks about seeing family and friends drink. He talks about how some do it for fun, to drown their sorrows, to fit in. There's always this constant pressure to buy into certain things, to fit in because everyone else is doing it, to use it as a coping mechanism, to just try it for the first time. It is that latter reason that Kendrick touches on when he says, "I was in a dark room, loud tunes, looking to make a vow soon." Speaking personally, throughout my life, you know, I've definitely dealt with some similar things. A part of me never really wanted to try alcohol, for example. You know, one way I looked at it, it was like, it's kind of a point of no return. Once you get a taste for something, you know, it can always be there to tempt you back. If you've never had it, you never have that temptation, you know, but once you try it, there's like no going back. That's one way I viewed it, you know. And another reason I had was one that kind of Kendrick touches on throughout the whole song, and it's kind of how alcohol changes people. Many of us can agree that we've seen alcohol turn people into their worst versions, and, you know, I didn't want to open the door to that because, you know, I just looked down like, man, there are many times where I already feel like a terrible person. I don't want to open the door to even think about the fact of what something influencing you can turn you into, you know. But as Kendrick talks about in the song, you get tempted and people just never seem to understand, you know. They'll egg you on. They'll look at you at the bad guy. They'll look at you as the bad guy for saying no. And it's kind of, you know, weird because it's like you give respect to those others, you know. You never judge them for their decisions, you never judge them for their lifestyle, you know, and you expect that same respect back for choosing to stay away, and yet people just don't let you, you know. Kendrick shows on the chorus that, you know, even buying into the temptation isn't enough to get people off your back, because then they're just trying to get you to drink more and more and to stop taking your time, you know. Again, like I said, there's no judgment to those who choose to live that lifestyle, but I always appreciate Kendrick for making a song like this to showcase the worst sides of peer pressure and to kind of let people know, you know, you're not the only one that feels this way. The outro of Swimming Pool sees Kendrick and his friends go back to try and intimidate the people who beat up Kendrick. However, in the aftermath, Kendrick's friend Dave is killed. Dave's brother realizes when he calls out to Dave and gets no response. When he gets to Dave, Dave is dead in Kendrick's arm. This is where we see a drastic shift in narrative. After this, we get my favorite song from the entire record, and probably gonna go down as one of my, if not the favorite song from Kendrick as a whole. It's a favorite of many. It is Sing About Me, I'm Dying of Thirst. It is a 12-minute song from Kendrick Lamar. And it's just one of my favorite displays of storytelling in all of music. The song is split into two parts. Kendrick details his life in Compton, and the first half sort of details it through two people's different perspectives. The first verse is presumed to be from the perspective of Dave's brother. He calls Kendrick just to talk, but also to show appreciation. He tells Kendrick that after everything, he is glad Kendrick believes in this dream to be free from the city. He compares the city to an orphanage, a bunch of kids who don't have positive influences and thus were thrust into the lifestyle they find themselves in. Dave's brother also thanks him for being there for his brother in his final moments. Kendrick held Dave and reassured even when death was certain. Despite this not being his lifestyle, he rushed out of the car to be there for him. Dave's brother wants to get revenge, but he is conflicted. On one hand, he wants to go out and avenge his brother. On the other hand, that's exactly what led to his brother getting killed in the first place. He continues to talk to Kendrick about how he feels, you know, that he was doomed from the start, feeling that he just never had the tools to make it out. And of course, as the verse ends, we get one of the saddest moments where he tells Kendrick he loves him and thanks him for loving his brother. He hopes that Kendrick makes it big and is able to tell his story one day. But of course, after seeing what happened to his brother, he knows life isn't guaranteed. So he tells Kendrick, "If I die before your album drops, I hope," before the verse is abruptly cut off by gunshots. Dave's brother is killed, presumably while going to get revenge for his brother. He doesn't live to see Kendrick make it big and their stories be told. His life is cut short and he doesn't even get to finish his talk with Kendrick. But Kendrick still fulfills his wishes, singing about him. We see this familial theme continue on the second verse, and the second verse is told through the perspective of Keisha's sister from Section 80. While Dave's brother was more thankful, Keisha's sister seemed more angry with Kendrick. Essentially, she felt Kendrick had no right putting their business out there. Keisha's sister has also fallen into the business just like her sister, and she mentions one of her clients is her favorite because he gives her ecstasy rather than money. This sort of sets her apart from Keisha because this sort of thinking doesn't necessarily line up with trying to escape the situation. Keisha's sister goes on to explain, like Dave's brother, that it was all luck of the draw. Had she grown up in a better home or environment, she wouldn't have fallen into the trappings of life. However, she doesn't want Kendrick to feel bad for her like he did with Keisha. In fact, she tells Kendrick to keep her off the album as she gets enough attention as it is. She even states that because of her job nature, she'll be more known than Kendrick is. She says she'll never fade away, but just like Dave's brother, the music tells otherwise. As she repeats the phrase and continues talking, she slowly but surely fades out. Stories lost to time, with only Kendrick here now to tell the story in hopes of keeping that memory alive. These two verses always scare me. Not in the typical sense though, it's just sort of this awakening, like it awakens you to that thought of that, yeah, life is going to end one day. It may come abruptly before you feel you accomplish what you needed to. Some things will go left undone, and someday you will completely fade from existence. Your children will remember you, your grandchildren might remember you, but there will be a time when even you fade from your own family's existence. It's such a tough pill to swallow, only made worse by the realization that it's more than likely the norm in a place such as Compton. Kendrick tries to cope with he tries to cope with these thoughts on his third verse. He wonders if he is scared of death. He hopes to go to heaven. He struggles to look at himself in the mirror and truly analyze the changes that need to be made. He questions his life and just how lucky he was to make it out. He told the stories of Dave's brother, Keisha's sister, and now himself. But even after all this, he sits and wonders if he even did enough in life to be remembered. Despite being a prolific artist, he still feels like those before him, scared of death and scared that he won't continue to live on through word. We then transition to the second half with a skit. It is Dave's brother and the rest of his friends talking about what to do. They are divided in what to do, and Dave's brother just breaks, saying that he's tired of all of it. This transitions into Kendrick's part, and it immediately starts off rough. Kendrick says, "Tired of running, tired of hunting my own kind, but retiring nothing." They're tired of having to live their life in fear, tired of having to live a life violently and enacting violence on their own people, and yet there just never seems to be change. There is no hope for change. Dying of thirst signifies the desire for saving. Throughout both records, Kendrick has mentioned his belief, and here he looks to God for help, for saving, for an escape from all this. He hopes that he can be forgiven for his sins and that God can just understand that he had no choice due to his environment. In the ending skit, we see Kendrick's neighbor intervene. And she intervenes due to seeing one of the men with a gun, and she says that they're angry right now, but she wants to pray over them. And so she does. She wants them to realize that God can save them from this lifestyle. And, as we saw through the beginning of the song, while it didn't stop Dave's brother, the encounter itself is what changes Kendrick. It is what led him to pursuing a different lifestyle, one that would save him from the city. Real is a song that sees Kendrick move forward, vowing to be real. He focuses on bettering himself. He focuses on loving himself so that he can escape this lifestyle. We get a voicemail from Kendrick's parents, and Kendrick's parents tell him to take music seriously as TDE, Kendrick's future label, called, and they want him to go visit the studio. If he takes this seriously, this is his ticket out. The record closes out with Compton featuring Dr. Dre, and the song serves as a sort of present day ending. Kendrick has made it working with one of the legends from his very city. He's made it out and now can celebrate. He can now bask in the fruits of his label and focus on helping others. To Pimp A Butterfly is Kendrick Lamar's third studio record, coming in at 16 songs and 1 hour and 18 minutes. Finally onto the next record. Sorry for yapping so much about Good Kid, M.A.A.d City, but it is seriously an amazing record that I consider one of the best ever. We move on to Kendrick's next record that took a sort of different approach in various ways. Sonically and thematically, To Pimp A Butterfly is very different from the last two. There are elements of jazz and spoken word on this record, and this record overall sees Kendrick Lamar take a sort of political approach. This mainly stems from all the incidents during the time between the two records, and the record starts off with Wesley's Theory, which already has some funk to it due to the inclusion of Thundercat. To add to this, Kendrick adds a variety of vocal effects and tones to match. For example, there is often a deep distorted voice and it is contrasted by Kendrick singing in a higher pitch. The song itself delves into the experiences of Black Americans, specifically racism and white supremacy. For Free Interlude is a song that Kendrick uses to touch on the music industry and how they try and use and abuse the artists within it. He talks about wanting to work to be financially stable enough to support a family, but he isn't going to slave away his life, He isn't going to do things for free and allow this industry to take advantage of him. While the song itself is a bit chaotic and at times humorous, it isn't the most sound song. One of my favorite parts though is the transition. At the end, we hear a woman exclaim, "You ain't no king," which takes us into the next track, King Kunta. This track is given its title from the character Kunta Kinte, a slave who refused to accept the name given to him by his slave owners and had his right foot cut off after attempting to escape. Continuing the dual theme of speaking on the issues Black Americans suffer through and, the music industry, Kendrick uses this track to talk about his place in the music industry. He talks about all the success he has gained, and now that he has it, people now want to acknowledge him. However, he's already hip to their intentions. Comparing it to Kunta Kinte, he knows that they want to cut off his legs from underneath him so that he can't continue his success. They want to stop his success, they want to stop his influence, but he's going to continue running. This song is also notorious for following up on his his Control feature verse. The two main lines of discourse are, "I can dig rapping, but a rapper with a ghostwriter, what happened? I swore I wouldn't tell, but most of y'all are sharing bars like you got the bottom bunk in a 2-man cell." And of course the other line, "I was gonna kill a couple rappers, but they did it to themselves. Everyone's suicidal, they don't even need my help." As Kendrick would describe towards the end of the song, the top of the music industry is like the belly of the beast. You are made a target for being successful, and this is just Kendrick's way of letting the music industry know he's always one step ahead of them. A great, energetic track, really enjoyed this one. Institutionalize is the next track, and it is very unique. Kendrick once again uses a higher pitched voice, and this track lyrically is one of my favorites. It's about Kendrick sort of becoming accustomed to his new life. The life of fame and success is very different from his life in Compton. While he still has detractors, he's gained a new following that adore him. Another example Kendrick gives is taking a young black kid to the BET Awards. This kid has seen nothing but violence and poverty, and so it's a bit of a shock to go to this award show and see groups of successful black entertainers ranging from musicians to comedians to actors. However, tying both examples together, Kendrick shows that both groups are institutionalized. Both his fans and this young boy admire him for his success, and while wanting to strive for success isn't a bad thing, it is their pursuit of wealth that is institutionalized within them. They want to be rich, they want to be successful, and so it drives them to do it by any means necessary, disregarding morality. On the chorus, Kendrick recites the main message he got from his grandmother. If one wants to be successful, you have to get up and work for it. You have to cleanse yourself of this greedy mindset. And we know this because of Kendrick's journey that he explained on Good Kid, M.A.A.d City. He wasn't even fully embedded in that lifestyle and still saw the consequences of it. It wasn't until he cleansed himself from it and devoted his life to music that he saw the success. These Walls is always interesting to me because of how Kendrick is able to discuss multiple themes with one single allegory. Speaks on the prison system, mental struggles, even sexual desire. It is a very dense track, and speaking of dense tracks, we get to one of the most one of Kendrick's most introspective tracks with You. We see Kendrick's mental struggles really continue, especially as he deals with self-love. He talks about how it's kind of complicated for him to love himself due to the things he's done and due to, stuff that has happened. His sister became pregnant as a teenager, and Kendrick blames himself for letting music distract him from being present in her life. Kendrick especially struggles with this because he is always told how his music is helping others, but it wasn't there to help his own sister, Kendrick also talks about using alcohol to numb his pain, and this is what leads us to the emotional second half. One of the things I love, again, Kendrick's choice of pitch. Again, he raps in this sort of higher pitch, but this time it's used to demonstrate the emotion in his voice along with the effects alcohol is having on him. He is just before we get there, the song comes to this halt, from the beginning part, and we get a little skit, and then our song transitions into the second half, and like I mentioned, the alcohol is having an effect on Kendrick, and this is where we truly see it. At this point, his voice is higher than all the other parts as he's just hysterical. Kendrick is having a full-on mental breakdown as he breaks down his own character. He calls into question his love for his own family, citing how he rarely sees them even when things are getting tough, He mentions not visiting his friend in the hospital. Kendrick states he only FaceTimed him and never visited because he assumed his friend would recover. Kendrick then even he opens up even more about his mental state. He talks about everything from depression to alcoholism to potentially being bipolar and having to hide that due to both the industry he is in and the culture he comes from. And finally, Kendrick calls back to the previous song, These Walls. The final line is probably the most revealing of Kendrick and his personal struggles. Despite the fame, despite the struggles, despite the confidence he displays, all of it isn't enough. After battling his conscience throughout the track, his conscience closes the track, leaving the audience with the final line. And if these mirrors could talk, it'd say you gotta go. And if I told your secrets, the world will know money can't stop a suicidal weakness. Once again, despite all that he has accomplished, Kendrick reveals that he often contemplates suicide due to his own failures. On multiple occasions, he has failed his family, his loved ones, and sometimes even the world. While perhaps influenced by alcohol, Kendrick just believes that the only way for him to really right these wrongs that he's done is to kill himself. One of the most successful and prolific artists of this generation, and yet even he isn't immune to such mental struggles like depression and suicidal thoughts. And once again, I know you're probably tired of me saying it, but this is Kendrick displaying that he is human. It is, again, one of his most introspective tracks. It is one that always gets me emotional. If you can't tell through my voice, it is something that just hits so hard, and it's just so simple, but it's just those final lines of like just so perfectly tying back into these walls, and going off of that, what do you call it, that phrase, of like these walls could talk, just such perfect stuff, man. But even after all that, we get an immediate mood shift with All Right, an anthem for years to come. The uplifting song is exactly what we needed after You. Kendrick talks about how certain things in this life are used to provide temporary bliss, such as money. Along with this, Kendrick touches on a variety of issues, such as drug use, police violence, and again, the struggles with past mistakes. But as the chorus goes on to state, they will be all right. Kendrick moves forward constantly with a hopeful mindset because he often realizes that this is the only thing he, as well as all of us, can really do. The next couple of songs, I don't really have too much to say about, but still want to talk about their importance to the record and overall story of Kendrick Lamar. Mama sees Kendrick get back to his roots. He talks about going back to Compton and even visiting Africa. Hood Politics sees Kendrick confront his survivor's guilt, trying to convince himself that he is deserving of his success. How Much a Dollar Costs is a crazy good song, diving into selfishness and perspective. A homeless man in South Africa asks Kendrick for $1 and Kendrick is very hesitant. The man gets mad at him, and it is that anger that kind of keeps Kendrick from leaving. He's confused at the anger over $1. So Kendrick talks with the man, who then cites the Bible, and this kind of causes Kendrick to feel guilty. And in the end, The man is revealed to be God, and he tells Kendrick he lost his place in heaven due to his selfishness and harsh judgment of a homeless man. It is an interesting track that really makes one ponder, again, the worth of a dollar, and also the many things that that dollar can represent, from actual money to time to love, many different ways to interpret it. Complexion, given the title, explores the topic of colorism, specifically how men and women of darker complexions are more likely to face judgment and mistreatment. Kendrick wants them to feel loved and, for his own community to kind of stop contributing to that hateful topic. The Blacker the Berry sees Kendrick's anger take center stage as he talks about issues Black Americans suffer through. He talks about the mistreatment they go through, and yet they are expected to just put up with it. They are expected to take the abuse and be grateful for it, whilst, essentially people telling them to be grateful for still having a place in society. They have to deal with hate and prejudice and are often looked at as ungrateful when they want change. And throughout the track, we hear Kendrick constantly say, "I'm the biggest hypocrite of 2015, but never explains why. He states he'll eventually get to it, and much like you, the reveal comes at the end where Kendrick finishes off his last verse stating, "So why did I weep when Trayvon Martin was in the street, when gang banging makes me kill a man blacker than me, hypocrite?" As we saw throughout Section 80 and Good Kid, M.A.A.d City, Kendrick grew up around so much violence and bad influences. He lost one of his friends to gang violence. So to remain fair and open, Kendrick calls that into question. Why is he so upset and outspoken during the events of the Trayvon Martin incident, but essentially turns a blind eye to the violence that occurred in his own life? Some took issue with this point of view from Kendrick, and like I said, to me, it just kind of comes off as Kendrick wanting to touch on all points, and really, cover all bases. And more so, it's also just likely a personal struggle that he has, As someone who grew up in a situation he did, Kendrick just wants to reflect on this aspect and kind of get answers out of himself. He wants to understand why is he feeling this way and how can he apply these emotions to other scenarios. You Ain't Gotta Lie, Mama Said is a fun upbeat song from Kendrick. I really love the beat from this song. I also enjoy the sort of meaning behind it, as it's essentially Kendrick's mom telling him that he doesn't have to fake things and he doesn't have to change himself in order to fit in. She wants him to remain the same him that he always was. I also really enjoyed the voice Kendrick decided to use for this track. To me, it just really fits the beat well and makes the song stand out. And Kendrick continues the positive vibes with while the majority of the album revolves around racial issues, worldly issues, as well as Kendrick's personal issues. Kind of comes off as a sort of celebration. It is celebrating success and growth and self-love. Even sort of love the bit that Kendrick throws in at the end. Kendrick is essentially back home celebrating his success with the people he loves, and an altercation begins to break out. Kendrick is frustrated. Now is supposed to be a time of celebration. Their stories are being told on such a grand level. Their struggles will now be seen. They can grow and develop from all this. And yet, almost like a wake-up call, he realizes that the problems are still there and that some people just don't want change, but he pleads with them. He tells them to save it for the streets, as this is meant to be a safe space for the kids. He tells them to just think about how many people were killed in 2015, the gang violence. And another plea Kendrick has for them is to think about the consequences. They have such a small amount of time on earth. Why do you want to lose a majority of it serving time? Mortal Man closes the record as a 12-minute song, and Kendrick touches on a lot on this track. He talks about how inspired he was by his trip to Africa and how inspired he was to take the trip to Africa. He mentions various figures from Nelson Mandela to Martin Luther King Jr. to Moses to Malcolm X. He even closes the song with an interview-like section with Tupac. And the song sort of, again, touches on a lot. It touches on loyalty and uses various examples, such as Nelson Mandela's wife waiting 27 years for him, asking if your spouse, family, or friends would be willing to stand by your side for a similar amount of times. He talks about if we would be willing to forgive our oppressors like Mandela did. And Kendrick also sort of calls in that loyalty that people have for public figures, because he questions, why do we have such loyalty for especially celebrities? What I really love the most about Mortal Man and Kendrick's entire discography is just this dedication he has for the craft. It is little things like his tone or choice of vocal style, and Kendrick's vocals in the first half of this track showcase a bit of frustration and emotion. And though it isn't heavy, you kind of get a raspiness of his voice to showcase that as well. And one of it's one of Kendrick's most defining songs, and this record as a whole is one of his most defining records. It is a record that truly propelled him to another level, and he would capitalize on that perfectly. Damn is Kendrick Lamar's fourth record, coming in 2017. Damn is known for being Kendrick's most commercially successful record, with 3 songs breaking the billion mark on Spotify. For Kendrick, this record was a way to sort of return to his usual self after such an introspective and heavy album into Pimp A Butterfly. Gone was the jazz influence, and In was a more commercial sound. Songs about love, boasting his success, but don't let that make you think that was going to stop Kendrick Lamar from still following a theme on this record. It really all boils down to the name. Damn. To be condemned by God to suffer eternal punishment in hell, or to condemn especially by the public expression of disapproval. This record focuses on introspection once again, examining what fate awaits Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick gets this point across even further through yet another lost art, and that is album sequencing. He takes the step further by double sequencing. If you listen to this album front to back, you get a story of how Kendrick is damned. However, if you listen to this album back to front, you get a different story and theme, but again, that theme sort of remains the same. By the end of each listen, Kendrick is still damned, but we are given the option to explore which way it happens. Damn is one of Kendrick's most underrated works lyrically and conceptually. Many kind of write it off due to its commercial success, and I have to admit, I personally have written it off a couple of times, or like previously, because of that same thing. I was like, oh, it's his most commercially successful album, but not a lot of songs hit with me, but it's one of those records that if you just really take the time to dive into it, read up on it, read up on the making of it, read up on the lyrics, and just hearing so many people's different interpretations of certain songs, certain lines, you get so much more out of it. And it's what makes it go up there as some of his best work, Like every other record, a lot of thought went into this, like I said, and it's a lot more that can be said for other artists of this generation right now. Again, I'm not trying to be negative. I don't like to be negative on this channel, but some artists can't even put in the effort to give their album something that they've been working on for months, years, a decent album cover. You got artists out here choosing to use AI slop over something that is going to represent your album, something that people are going to see, and it's what's going to draw them into listening to your album. I've said it so many times, a good album cover is what draws me in so many times. It just frustrates me. This is supposed to be something that encapsulates your work, something that could tie into it, but nope, they're more just like, here, just do whatever. Here's a random selfie I took as the album cover. Here's, worse with the rise of AI. Here's some AI generated cover. There's so many amazing artists out there, and yet you don't choose to utilize them because you want to cheap out things like album covers, album sequencing, concepts, themes. It used to mean something in music, man. Small rant aside though, I just wanted to get all that out the way before jumping into this music. I feel kind of bad for talking about the themes, most of these videos, especially because, this is super detailed. But little has been said about the actual music, so like I want to kind of mix it up with this record specifically. Like I'm still going to bring up the lyrics to you in a minute, but I also want to talk about the actual music, because another thing that is really great is just all the producers that Kendrick has worked with in his career. They give him some of his best production, but this one again has some really great stuff, and that's why I want to talk about it equally here. So the record, it starts off with Blood, and Blood starts off with posing the following question: is it wickedness? Is it weakness? You decide. Are we gonna live or die? And once again, the story of the album is in our hands. Fate is sealed already. Kendrick Lamar is going to die and be damned, but we kind of decide, how does it get to that point? After this, the song sees Kendrick go to help a blind woman, and the blind woman tells him he's lost something: his life. A gunshot is heard, and it helps us transition to the outro. Remember when I said there are people in this world who ignorantly misunderstand Kendrick songs? We see exactly that on the outro as a news station clip is played where the two hosts focus on one singular line rather than examining the entire meaning of the song as well as the purpose for the line. We transition into DNA where Kendrick is at his most unapologetic self. He takes pride in his DNA, his culture, his heritage. He still critiques certain parts of his culture, but again, he's very unapologetic. Essentially is saying that even the bad he takes pride in because it is what has helped mold him into who he is today. Every group is going to have people or things that badly represent them, but that shouldn't stop you from focusing on the good. That is the message he wants those news anchors to get. Even if you don't like the one line, that shouldn't stop you from seeing the overall message. The distorted background vocals that make small appearances on this song. Tiny note, but really enjoyed those. And then of course there's that beat switch with the countdown that is amazing. Ya is the next song, and it's kind of all about Kendrick being aware of his surroundings in a sense, remaining aware to stay true to his character, being wary of those who will try and use his name for clicks and views like the news, staying in tune with God so that he doesn't stray too far into worldly desires. A much slower song after the energetic DNA, but I think it kind of works out well. We then shift to Element, probably my favorite song on the whole record. There's just something about the tone of Kendrick's voice on this track that really sticks out to me. Once again, Kendrick is unapologetic. This time, it kind of comes with his place in hip hop is why he's unapologetic. He lets it be known that he is at the top of the game and won't hesitate to fight back if he's tested. One set of lines that I just really enjoy is Kendrick saying, "I'm willing to die for this. I done cried for this. Might take a life for this. Put the Bible down and go eye for an eye for this." I love these lines for two reasons. One, it showcases the pure passion and love that Kendrick has for this art form. He worked for everything he has, and he has music to thank for it. And so, he would give his all for music because it saved his life. And the second reason is continuity. From the very beginning, we have seen Kendrick deal with the battle between the world and God. On one hand, he wants God to lead his path. On another, the world sort of keeps testing him to the point where he's like, I gotta put the Bible down to handle these matters in a more worldly fashion. I like it because, again, it continues that theme of just Kendrick attempting to make himself human in our eyes, and, especially in the eyes of the audience, where he's just like, even I have my moments, guys, even I, who I'm trying to live this godly life and walk this path of God, even I get tempted by the world, and I have to be like, God, excuse me, I just gotta go handle this real quick. It's pretty funny when you look at it that way. And another part I like is the sort of short little bridge where Kendrick says, "Damned if I do, if I don't." And I like the line because, again, it's one of those things that kills multiple birds with one stone. On one side, again, it continues that theme of damnation, as we said in the start, and it's sort of Kendrick calling into the question about the theory of pre-damnation, basically saying, like, if his fate is already decided, does it matter what he does? Does it matter if he walks the godly lifestyle, chooses the worldly lifestyle? Like, it's diving into that whole, like I said, theory of pre-damnation. That's him sort of questioning, like, damn if I do, damn if I don't, And on another side, it's kind of, the basic meaning of the phrase, where he's basically just like, no matter what I do, I'll be damned, I can make good music and there will still be those that don't like it. I can try to make music that will raise awareness and there will be people that oppose my views. He remains silent and people will begin to question, why has he not spoken on such a manner, He tries to uplift his community only to be met with backlash. He wants to, he even kind of calls his contemporaries into questions, and their envy, saying like they're jealous of him and thus they try and knock him down given, at any given opportunity. And, Kendrick says they throw rocks and try to hide their hands. Given his previous biblical allusions, I wouldn't be surprised if this was, referencing when Jesus said, whoever is without sin may throw the first stone. Basically, everyone wants to throw stones at Kendrick, but hide their hands so as not to be judged for their own actions and be held responsible and accountable for their own mistakes, Really enjoyed that line. And like I said, this song is one of my favorites for so many reasons. The lyrics, the beat, the different background effects, like the vocals that kind of sound like when you flick a door stopper, Kendrick's aggressive tone. So much to enjoy with this one. And then we move on to our next track, and that is Feel, and it's an interesting one for me. It is very simplistic, and for that reason, it was a song that, kind of like the whole record, I kind of didn't go back too often. I kind of wrote off at times, because I was just like, man, Kendrick's kind of repetitive on this song, but to me, as I gave it another listen for this discography review, I found myself enjoying it even more than before, because it just kind of comes off as him getting all his emotions off without any sort of direction. The feelings do connect at times and some correspond to others, but it generally comes off as someone who is getting years off of his chest, you know? And that's the sort of newfound love I have for the track after all these years, because this song is exactly how I feel at times. There's so much on my mind, my soul, my heart, kept inside for years. Many of the things Kendrick mentions here are some of the same sort of thoughts and feelings that I have at times. The mellow mood of the track helps as well. The beat is very simple and soft as to not take away from Kendrick's main message, very much like spoken word in a way. Loyalty is the next song featuring Rihanna. Very simple song. Kendrick and Rihanna sort of just discuss the importance of honesty and loyalty in all sorts of relationships. I like the vocal approach on this one, such as, the Bruno Mars sample. I like Kendrick and Rihanna going back and forth. The contrast of their voice works very well. Pride sees Kendrick go introspective once again, targeting his own pride. From viewing himself as the best to his own personal life, Kendrick breaks down his pride. He talks about his struggles with remaining humble, often teetering more toward arrogance. He talks about his struggles with pride in comparison to his beliefs, feeling his actions don't reflect them properly. A very mellowed out song done intentionally to contrast the next song. Humble. Pride, despite being the in-your-face attitude, is soft, quiet, and personal. Humble, despite being the quiet, honest attitude, is loud and in your face and overflowing with confidence. Humble, one of the biggest songs on the record, sees Kendrick at his highest braggadocious level, which plays into the irony of the name in the two tracks. The chorus even adds to this as it sees Kendrick saying to sit down and be humble. Once again, like he said on Pride, his actions are not properly reflecting his beliefs, further cementing the struggles he is having with his various emotions and attitudes. After this, we get another personal favorite of mine in Lust. Lust touches on all the temptations of life, from intimacy to the party life to luxurious items. Kendrick just talks about how his life as an artist is just sort of further amplifies these temptations. With his status, these things are so easily accessible to him, making it that much more difficult to have the strength to deny them. I love Kendrick's decision to use a higher pitch at times, as it really kind of sells the desperation. It also ties into the chorus where Kendrick describes needing water, a vital source in life, and the water can represent his desire for what is tempting him, but it can also symbolize him needing to be saved from such temptations and lifestyles. This is one of my favorite beats from the record as well, and I just love Kendrick's flow and cadence, especially on that third verse. Kendrick continues the theme of duality by following Lust with Love, a song that really sees Kendrick pour his heart out and touch into that more intimate side. A very soft song that sees Kendrick talk about the love he has and his willingness to do everything for her. Triple X sees Kendrick team up with U2 to dive back into the political talk. He talks about the influence media has on the youth, but more specifically the black youth. He talks about how the examples of success they are shown leads them to believing outlets such as higher education aren't really meant for them. The beat switches and we see Kendrick absolutely go off, and once again we see that battle with his philosophies. Kendrick describes a man coming to him in tears talking about his son getting killed, and the key point here is that the man asks Kendrick what he should do and specifically says, "I know that you anointed, show me how to overcome." This man views Kendrick essentially as someone who has specifically been blessed by God, and we see Kendrick battle with this because he says, he was looking for some closure, hoping I could bring him closer to the spiritual. My spirit do know better, but I told him. Kendrick wants to help him, and like he says, his spirit knows there are better options, better ways to help this man, but once again, Kendrick displays that struggle, telling the man that despite the way he views him, if it was Kendrick in this situation, somebody needs to die in exchange for the loss of his son. Kendrick basically explains that he's going to these extreme lengths for love, loyalty, and passion, and Kendrick is ruthless, saying that he would go wait outside wherever the man hangs, and go as far as waiting outside of his church service, waiting for his church service to end, if it means that's how he has to get him. It is that challenge of his upbringing and current world battling again with the newfound beliefs he is trying to uphold. Kendrick shows this by ending the verse with him showing up at a convention to talk to kids about gun violence. And then the song ends on a softer note with U2 singing and Kendrick praying for all the prevalent issues in life. Fear builds upon this, with Kendrick exploring all the various times he has felt afraid, from being a kid in the hood to feeling like fame has put a target on his back. The Alchemist does a great job with the beat here, and I really appreciate how well it pairs with the various voices Kendrick uses on this track. I'll be completely honest though with our next track, God. It's always been one of my least favorite tracks on the record. It's mainly a combination of things, Kendrick's cadence and flow, as well as the instrumental not being a favorite of mine. They're just sort of all contributing factors to my non-enjoyment of the track. And then Damn closes out with Kendrick telling the story of the craziest butterfly effect. He describes the life of TDE's founder, Anthony. He talks about Anthony's life in the projects, and in these projects, Anthony had a tough life. But one thing Kendrick mentions is that Anthony went into a KFC and met a man named Ducky. Kendrick describes how Ducky was very aware of his surroundings, but mainly Anthony. Ducky knew Anthony, knew the type of life he was involved in. So Ducky would always give Anthony free food and often give him extra biscuits to get on his good side, because he knew this exact KFC had been robbed before. And so eventually, when Anthony comes to rob the place, he spares Ducky's life due to the kindness that Ducky always showed him. Probably looking at all that and like, man, it's such a random story to tell. How it all is just a butterfly effect. Well, I'll let Kendrick explain it best with the following lines. Pay attention, that one decision changed both of their lives, one curse at a time. Reverse the manifest in good karma, and I'll tell you why. You take two strangers and put them in random predicaments. Give them a soul so they can make their own choices and live with it. 20 years later, then, them same strangers, you make them meet again inside recording studios where they're reaping their benefits. Then you start reminding them about that chicken incident. Whoever thought the greatest rapper would be from coincidence. Because if Anthony killed Ducky, Top Dog could be serving life while I grew up without a father and die in a gunfight. Kendrick's father was the man working at KFC, and Anthony, as we mentioned, would later go on to found TDE, who Lamar signed with for years. Had Kendrick's father not shown kindness, had Anthony not felt compelled by his kindness, we are looking at a very completely different outcome to this entire story. There would be no TDE to recruit Kendrick and get him out of Compton. There would be no father to keep Kendrick on the right path, and as Kendrick puts it, probably would have died in a gunfight, succumbing to the influences of his surroundings. And that is how the verse closes, with the gunshot. The verse then starts to play in reverse, and we hear the entire album going in reverse before the opening lines of the album repeat again. Almost like Kendrick rewinded a tape and starting that cycle again, and once again showing that the listening order matters. I mentioned it before, sequencing is such a lost art on the music world right now. There's so many albums where it just doesn't matter what order you listen to, and it's an issue because it's just causing so many people to skip out on albums in general and instead just find the songs they like. So it's nice to see that even an album that was commercially successful, Kendrick still went out there to care about such a minute but impressive detail, And once again, shout out to all the engineers and producers who helped contribute and build upon Kendrick's idea for this commercially successful but creatively underrated record. And now we reach the most disrespected work of Kendrick Lamar's career. Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers is Kendrick Lamar's fifth and, as of this recording, most recent record. Released in 2022, there was a 5-year gap between this release and Damn. You question if the pandemic really extended that time or not, but as I said, it is his most disrespected and probably most misunderstood record out of the 5. See, 5 years is a long time to wait. With each year that passes, anticipation and expectations grow. What is Kendrick Lamar going to do on this record? How is he going to change things up? What exactly is he going to talk about on this record? To add fuel to the flame, let's add in more political movements occurring, more global issues rising, the pandemic, etc. People wanted to hear from Kendrick Lamar. Well, The time came, and when Kendrick released, everybody sort of went, wait, not like that. Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers was one of the most introspective records that I personally have ever heard. Throughout this video, I have kept mentioning how people misconstrue Kendrick's lyrics, his song meanings, even his own life. They uplift him and view him as this great voice of the people. And with this album, you will learn why I keep mentioning all this. Quick note, I am likely going to skip over some songs or just make quick note of them. I will personally say, even knowing it is technically a double album, my biggest issue with this record is length, and that is more so the amount of songs on it rather than the length of time. That doesn't mean the songs are meaningless or don't contribute to the overall narrative. I just felt it could have been condensed a bit better, and some songs just don't connect with me. But we open the record with United in Grief. The first thing we hear is an angelic-like voice simply saying, "I hope you find some peace of mind." This is followed by Kendrick's fiancée Whitney telling him to tell his story. Then Kendrick says he's been going through something and acknowledges that it has been 1,855 days since his last album. After this, we have a very simplistic beat, simple piano, occasional drum roll. The main focus is Kendrick's word, to listen to what he is saying. But as we go on, we hear a car horn, almost like we are caught in the middle of traffic. The drums speed up, and everything just begins to get chaotic as Kendrick's flow speeds up too. We start to hear him, but lose him to the pace of the song. This is exactly how it felt to listen to this album when it dropped. After 5 years, we're immediately thrust into this deep, heavy opener, so much that Kendrick is saying, and it is so overwhelming to catch it all. Slowly, you realize this is exactly how Kendrick is feeling. All these things he is saying are what has plagued him for years. Relationships, lust, greed, loss, everything all at once, bombarded with emotions and feelings with no time to properly process it all. We then get into N95, which tackles the pandemic, talking about how horrible the entire thing was handled by the government and people of America. But it also serves as a break, as there are some parts where it is more of Kendrick calling out clout chasers and facades in the rap world. Die Hard is one of my favorite tracks, featuring Blast and Amanda Reifer. Blast and Amanda just perfectly complement this song with their voices. Kendrick actually put me on to Blast with this feature, as he was one of my favorite parts of the song, and I have enjoyed quite a lot of his releases since. The song itself sees Kendrick open about vulnerability. He talks about how his insecurities and past are what contributed to his reluctancy to open up. He is afraid that opening up and being vulnerable will lead to those very things being used against him, as seen in the second verse when he says, "If I told you who I am, would you use it against me?" It does kind of make me sad to see a message like this, because this entire album is always used against Kendrick. It very well reminds me of, people who would take Kid Cudi's openness about his mental struggles and use it against him, thus basically affirming the reluctance that these artists have to being so open about their lives. But Kendrick learned from this reluctance, and he wants to be better, as demonstrated by Blast on the chorus when he says, "I hope I'm not too late to set my demons straight. I know I made you wait, but how much can you take? I hope you see the God in me." Kendrick is essentially telling his lover that he's trying to be better, and that he hopes that their patience isn't running thin. He wants them to see the effort and change that is occurring to help him be a better partner. A very lovely song and one of my favorites from the entire record. The vulnerability continues on the next track though, Father Time. Father Time opens with Whitney telling Kendrick he needs to go to therapy. Kendrick tries to say that real men don't need therapy, and Whitney calls him stupid for that type of thinking. Of course, as we have seen his entire career, Kendrick turns to music as his therapy. Kendrick with this song doesn't even try to subtly hint at the song's topic, as he opens with the line, "I come from a generation of home invasions and I got daddy issues, that's on me." Kendrick then proceeds to go into detail about his relationship with his father. The main focus and gripe that Kendrick has with his father is the mentality he instilled in him. As Sampha repeats on the chorus, Kendrick's father was all about tough love. You scraped your knee? Brush it off and get it up. You got fouled in basketball? There are no fouls, just play through it. His father's mother ends up passing away. His dad is still off to work because the bills don't wait on nobody. Kendrick has trouble expressing emotions because his dad instilled in him that emotions equal weakness. Anger and lashing out, weakness. Crying, weakness. Even seeking an I love you was seen as weakness. And Kendrick goes into heavy details on how that affected his life. It made him competitive to the point that he can't see how someone can reconcile with somebody that they had beef with. It has caused him to have trust issues. And in the end, Kendrick still loves his father. He still says that he loves his father, even if he became everything he didn't want him to be. Kendrick appreciates his father's teachings because it made him into the man he is today. It brought him wealth, it brought him success, but it was also those same teachings that helped him break the cycle. He is vulnerable, he is open, he is apologetic to Whitney that she has had to put up with all his antics. And he encourages more men who are dealing with the same, whether they had a father or not, to break that cycle. Just amazing. Rich Spirit sees Kendrick go into detail on how he tries to break the mold of celebrities. He tries to keep a low profile. He goes months without his phone, is rarely in the headlines. And my favorite line in this song, though, is when Kendrick says, "I pray to God you actually pray when somebody dies. Thoughts and prayers way better off timelines." Not everything needs to be on social media. Not going to talk, not going to go too heavily into that. That's all I'm going to say is not everything needs to be on social media. And speaking of things like that, I'm not going to talk about it, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention We Cry Together. We Cry Together was an experience, to say the least, on first listen. It is a play or short film in music form. It is so chaotic. There are so many other songs, again, that I can cover, but as I mentioned, I'm not going to go into all of them. And the ones I really want to go to detail on, there's 3 more. These next 3 songs, I think, are the most essential to the theme of this record. Let's look back at the one annoying thing that I have been repeating to you all this entire video. I have kept mentioning with various songs that people misunderstand the message of Kendrick Lamar's song, using swimming pools as a drinking song despite it being a song about peer pressure, focusing on one singular line about the police and all right rather than the entire meaning of the song, thinking m.A.A.d City is promoting gang violence. Let's take it to real life. People misunderstanding various Kendrick Lamar performances, people calling out Kendrick for not appearing at any protests, only to be seen attending in incognito gear as to not draw attention to him. Go back to the line from Rich Spirit about everything not needing to be on social media. And finally, people, ever since To Pimp a Butterfly, proclaiming Kendrick Lamar to be this great political activist who speaks for the people. The people require his opinions on topics. They need to hear him speak. They need to hear him speak out on issues and raise awareness. They need the man from Compton, California to be their savior.
Kendrick made you think about it, but he is not your savior.
Savior is the track that finally sees Kendrick put all this nonsense to rest. Even though he has stated it repeatedly, as far back as Section 80, he has to spell it out for people. The song opens with Kendrick literally giving examples. Kendrick made you think about it, but he is not your savior. Cole made you feel empowered, but he is not your savior. Future said get a money counter, but he is not your savior. Braun made you give him his flowers, but he is not your savior. He is not your savior. Kendrick Lamar is and will forever be a man from Compton, nothing more, nothing less. It is the people who create this misconstrued image that he is this perfect savior. He is our voice of the voiceless. Just stop. He is just a man who has made music about his own life and opinions. Nowhere did he tell you that you have to value his opinion and exalt him to this higher status. The man doesn't even like his celebrity status. He took 5 years off after his most commercially successful album, and you think this is the man that wants to be in the limelight? Kendrick on this song goes on to say that he is more like Kodak Black than this exalted figure that they have made him out to be. Kodak Black was an extremely controversial feature throughout this record, and it was one I personally will tell you I didn't enjoy. I didn't enjoy the creative decision, I didn't enjoy the features, but yet Here is Kendrick openly saying that he is closer to this man than the vision that people have created of him. On Mortal Man, Kendrick asked that when things go sideways, would we still be fans? And now on Savior, here he asks, are we actually happy for him? Going back to the whole protest debacle, Kendrick also says, one protest for you, 365 for me. While people go to the protests, and, you know, those type of people will go get their pictures for social media, Kendrick says that's every day for him. The man who has constantly written music about the struggles the black community has had to suffer through. The man who lived through those struggles and thus gave him the content to create a music career out of. The man who has to be a black American every day. His life and career are a living protest to the same issues they questioned him for not speaking out on. Yes, the man needs to appear at a protest for you to know his opinions on the matter. And even if he didn't, why does it matter? This is still something that I have never understood and probably never will. Why do you care what Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole, Tom Brady, Denzel Washington, what do you care what these people have to say on a topic? Why does the only thing that should matter is what you feel? Why do you care what a damn celebrity thinks? Stop putting them on this pedestal and focus on your own life. And that is what this song is about, is what is felt, you know? Savior is basically Kendrick Lamar screaming in our faces that he is not your savior. He is not some type of savior of the masses. No celebrity should be lifted up to some type of status like this. Stop putting him on that pedestal and just recognize he is a man who makes music. And I'm sorry, but we're going to build on this even more with one more song. But yes, just it is an amazing song. I'm glad he just said it right in everyone's faces. I am not your savior. Stop looking to me as your savior. And again, we're going to get into this more. But before that, we must experience heartbreak. One of the most heartbreaking and vulnerable songs on the record comes in the form of Mother I Sober. Mother I Sober is exactly that. It is like watching Kendrick Lamar crying to his mother as he faces the sobering reality of life, coming to terms with all his trauma and mistakes. From the guilt he lives with for cheating on Whitney to the generational trauma that seems inevitable. The most difficult part that Kendrick is trying to come to terms with is in the confession of the title. Mother I Sober. Alcohol, drugs, neither are there to affect the decision making. Cheating on Whitney was a sober decision. Other issues in the world such as sexual abuse, regular abuse, murder, stealing, many of these things are done sober. Obviously in some cases alcohol and drugs are are present to influence those actions, but Kendrick is talking about facing the reality that many of these things, many of our mistakes are done without outside influence. It was our own mind. It was his own mind. It was his actions that led him to committing. It is that sobering reality that we are in control and still choose to act in such a manner. We choose to let our emotions get the best of us and make decisions that would ultimately hurt us and others. In the end of this track, we hear Whitney talking to Kendrick again, where she tells him, "You did it. I'm proud of you. You broke a generational curse." Once again, I'll let genius take it away with this one, where someone wrote, with Kendrick deciding to open up and looking for help, his daughter won't have to suffer living in a toxic environment of grief, insecurities, apathy in their parents' daily relationship, daddy issues, or all the struggles that can possibly come with men cheating on their wives. Now that Kendrick has done the necessary work to address these issues, Whitney says he has broken a generational curse. In the Bible, generational curses happen when someone's sins cause negative consequences for future generations. However, because of Kendrick's courageous transparency, healing can now begin in their household. It almost brings me to tears anytime I hear this song. This is art. This is music. To see such a theme explored across an entire album like this is genuinely breathtaking. To me, I believe it is the reason many didn't enjoy this album, because of, like I said, music at the end of the day will always be an entertainment, but nobody got entertainment out of this record. What they got was the sobering reality that each and every single one of us has trauma deep within that can only be healed by confronting such issues head on. Daddy issues, mommy issues, infidelity, abuse, substance abuse, ego. People have to come face to face with their demons, and they didn't like it. But the ending of this song is what should inspire us. To hear Kendrick's daughter say thank you brings tears to my eyes. The innocence of saying thank you, not knowing the impact of what her father just did. Issues may occur later on, as they always do, but now there is a precedent. Gone are the days of letting the trauma pass on to the next generation. And in are the days of being open and willing to work through such problems. A heartbreaking and yet almost heartwarming final rapper. Except this is not the end. Mirror is the closing song on the record and my favorite from the entire record. Mirror is the closing credits to this movie of a record. The song opens with Kodak saying, "I choose me." And the rest of the song goes on to explain what that statement exactly means and entails. This is the song that gives meaning to the album cover and ties in with Savior, of course. Kendrick drew a lot of controversy for his cover, as it sees him wearing the crown of thorns. Many people saw this and immediately called into question if he was trying to equate himself to Jesus. Folks, say it with me once again. People misunderstand Kendrick Lamar's messages. Kendrick bearing the crown of thorns isn't him equating himself to Jesus in the sense of him saying he is above everyone and should be revered as a god. No, the cover is instead Kendrick depicting himself as how people view him. And the entire record is tearing that perspective down. Once again, Kendrick knew what being vulnerable was going to do, as I mentioned. This album completely tears down that celebrity image. It exposes his flaws, it exposes his traumas, it finally makes him human in the eyes of humanity. He knows he will no longer be looked at as Superman. He is no longer invincible, and that is okay. On Mirror, he chooses himself and his own health. The line that has always stuck out to me from day one is, "Sorry I didn't save the world, my friend. I was too busy building mine again." Kendrick Lamar from day one has never wanted to be a savior. He never wanted to be a prominent figure in this world. Over the years, Kendrick Lamar lost himself to the fame and status that his music created. It got to a point where he had to put an end to it. Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers is his final sacrifice, opening up his trauma in hopes that he can finally get back to who he always was. Kendrick Lamar Duckworth from Compton, California. Mirror is him choosing his life. My favorite closing track of all time, one that I seriously looked at and said, if he was to retire, this is the storybook ending. Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. Not perfect, but a damn good record. And with that, the video comes to a close. Wait a second. Aren't you glad I took my time with this video? This is exactly why I took my time. At some point when all the beef was unfolding, I told myself, there's no way he doesn't drop something this year, right? As I was writing the script, I was originally going to cover the beef, like the songs that he released during the beef at the end. But like I said, during the beef, I was like, there's no way he doesn't drop something, right? Then the Super Bowl announcement comes and I just knew it was coming. I just had to be patient. Once again, as Kendrick has even mentioned in one of his songs before, it may not, I don't think it was a release song, but you know, I think it was one of those, was it like when he hopped on J. Cole's song or something where, you know, he mentioned it again. It's the story of the tortoise and the hare, and once again, that story rings true. I just had to be patient, and here we are. GNX is Kendrick Lamar's latest release and was a surprise drop on November 22nd, 2024. My friend in our group chat sent the little snippet that Kendrick posted, and before I could even hear it, I clicked on it and I hadn't turned the volume up. Before I could even hear it, he immediately started spamming, going, Kendrick drop, Kendrick drop, Kendrick drop. I stopped everything I was doing. I stopped everything I had planned for that day. And I just was like, we're going to listen to this album. Especially once I saw the track list. Oh my goodness, man. GNX opens with Whacked Out Murals. The track opens with Mariachi de la Barrera. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Always difficulty pronouncing names on this channel. It's a common theme at this point. The lines are prominent in the beginning, middle, and ending tracks, sort of giving us a theme already and like properly splitting things. Whacked Out Murals sees Kendrick at his breaking point with the rap world. His mural in Compton was defaced. He says that the hate he received would be enough to cause somebody to seek refuge somewhere else, maybe even switching genres if you look at it in a musical sense. But this hatred is what drives Kendrick. Kendrick then states that he had beef with one person this year, but after all the hate, it is an F the world mentality from here on out. He has hate for everybody. He is ready to go against the world. This is especially prominent in his lines about Lil Wayne and Snoop Dogg. He took offense to Snoop Dogg posting Drake's song that used AI to mock Tupac. And he says that he hopes Snoop just wasn't in the right state of mind when he posted that. And when it comes to Lil Wayne, Kendrick has no issues with him. As he says, he loved his music. He loved listening to him growing up and looked up to him. But what hurt Kendrick was Wayne's reaction to Kendrick's Super Bowl announcement. While a fellow legend like Nas congratulated him, Wayne was hurt that he didn't get selected, and in turn unintentionally led to Kendrick getting more hate. This led to Kendrick saying that his hard work let Lil Wayne down, since it's what led to him being chosen over Wayne. Another line I enjoy is Kendrick saying he never lost himself for a rap image. While everybody came up with their own interpretations of Kendrick, he always remained true to his own character. There's so much more, but obviously with this record just dropping, it's kind of hard to grasp it all right now. What is not hard to grasp is how much of a banger our next track is, Squabble Up. I lost my mind the moment I heard this song, because we're used to Kendrick, man. We were all so convinced Kendrick's not dropping the song he teased at the beginning of Not Like Us video. It's the same old stuff with Kendrick, man. He ain't releasing that, and yet here we are. Squabble Up, one of the most fun songs, and is an absolute love letter to the West Coast. And that's where I got beef with you, Kendrick. That's where I got beef with you. How dare you drop your most West Coast album the moment I leave? You robbed me of being able to enjoy this album in its fullest in the West Coast. Jokes aside though, I was so ready to hear what the rest of this song was going to sound like after this, the T snippet part. And when I Hear Music sample came in, I literally ascended like the SpongeBob meme. One of the most fun tracks on the entire record, with one of my favorite Kendrick sounds. He's just attacking this song head on, and it just makes for such a super entertaining track, man. Things then slow down a bit with our next song, Luther. Luther sees Kendrick and SZA join together for a softer track. The song, given in the name, features portions of Luther Vandross. The song can be a very sudden shift after the first two tracks. They were very aggressive in their sound, but I really enjoyed the song. It's a nice change of pace, and you get some really nice vocals from SZA, as well as the sample of Luther Vandross and Cheryl Lynn being used perfectly here. Perfect sample usage here. The next song continues that softer, slower sound, but contrasts it perfectly with Kendrick still being very angry. Man at the Garden is so great to me because the title alone gets the theme across. On this track, Kendrick is once again frustrated with his detractors. He goes into detail about the effort that he has put into music in his career, working long nights, not knowing if he was going to make it out. He puts in this work. He has helped his family, his community, the rap industry as a whole. He is thankful for what he has and does his best to remain true to himself, to be humble, to do his work with integrity. And yet all he receives is hate. All this man gets is hate and people wanting to tear him down. So on this track, he demanded that he receive his flowers. He knows that he deserves all of his success because, again, he put in the work. He remained true to himself. He made sure to help those that uplifted him and helped them make it this far. Man at the Garden is exactly that. Kendrick wanting to be given his flowers for his hard work that would have broken others. And yet, here he is, a man who rose up from the trials and tribulations. Nobody is going to take that away from him. Hey Now is the next track that features underground Cali rapper Dodie 6. Excellent collaboration here. Love the creative decision from Kendrick to choose a different rap style to really contrast Dodie on this one. I also love the good back and forth bit. I always love on rap records when you have a good back and forth between two guys. It's also, has a subtle topic of not conforming to like what the industry wants from him. Reincarnated sees about at a return, and along with that, Tupac's influence on Kendrick. Big influence on Kendrick, and we see it here as Kendrick samples one of Tupac's songs. And it could also be seen as Kendrick, showing Drake how to tastefully honor the legends in this genre. The theme of this song sees Kendrick rap through the perspective of artists John Lee Hooker and Dinah Washington. At least that's what is speculated at the current moment. I love the genius note stating that since both of these artists were in their prime around the same time, rather than explicitly suggesting that his soul inhabited each of their bodies before his own, Kendrick is likely suggesting that the Black community today can inherit and build upon the artistic greatness of those who came before while learning from their mistakes and shortcomings. Another part I really enjoyed is the final section that sees Kendrick return to his story, his mistakes, his flaws, a little back and forth with God about such issues, and in the end promising to use music to connect with people in hopes of inspiring them to make changes to their own lives. The next track, TV Off, featuring Lefty Gunplay, sees Kendrick back in that squabble up Hey Now range. Perfect placement as the song sees Kendrick call for us to stop letting society influence us and instead focus on our own goals and development. Kendrick is definitely, the one that can attest to this, as he's admitted to going months without his phone. He rarely makes appearances especially on social media. That time away from outside influences really allows for peace and reflection to occur. The next track, Dodger Blue, admittedly isn't a favorite of mine right now. And no, it isn't because I don't like the Dodgers and I'm a Phillies fan, That adds to it, but it's not that. It just isn't my style of song. But I do enjoy Kendrick's line where he says, "Don't say you hate LA when you don't travel past the 10." LA is huge. If you're only sticking to one area, it would kind of be ignorant to make a statement as Kendrick's saying, it's like there's so much, especially because if you're only visiting the tourist sites, you're not really going to see a whole lot. LA is very diverse. It's very special. So you just can't limit yourself when exploring. Personally, I would recommend you make a trip down to East LA. Of course, the number one thing, which applies to anywhere you're traveling, just be respectful. Be respectful of the community, be respectful of the culture. Very simple stuff. Peekaboo is another fun track, another West Coast banger. Kendrick's cadence was a highlight, and enough just can't be said about how fun of a track this is. So much of this record was just so fun because it just has you it's so catchy. There's so many lines that stick out and are easy to repeat. Very fun track. But our next track though, best song on the record for me, Heart Part 6, is the 6th installment of Kendrick's The Heart series. Although it doesn't follow the tradition of releasing it as a single, and it is missing the in it, it's, I would like to think, still part of the installment, and sees Kendrick reclaim the title after Drake's baffling attempt earlier this year. And to make it even more perfect, Kendrick doesn't even allow that pale imitation to influence his series. Much like previous installments, he's going to continue to focus on the state of his life, the state of the industry. The Use Your Heart sample, perfectly used. Perfect sampling here creates such a soulful atmosphere with this one, and environment. The entire track is almost like Kendrick walking down memory lane, recalling his journey through the industry, through life. Given this is his first release post TDE, and now is releasing with his own label PG Lang, this track almost acts like a final chapter. Kendrick recalls his journey through TDE, and unlike Man at the Garden, Kendrick isn't asking for his flowers, but is instead giving flowers. from Schoolboy Q to Absol to Punch to J-Rock to Dave to Rhett to Moose to Tease to Soundwave to everyone at Top Dog. He is giving them their flowers, thanking them for their contributions as he moves on to this new chapter, knowing that he couldn't have made it this far without every single one of them. It is such a beautiful track. I love it. It's my favorite off the record. The title track, GNX, not a record I didn't enjoy that much. Same kind of goes for Gloria, but I think with Gloria, it's just I haven't had a lot of time to really consume that song, really look into its meaning. But overall, man, a great record that immediately shot up my end of year list, you know, no spoilers. If you think I didn't go into enough detail, the record just dropped. People every day are finding something new about it. You know, there's like some people that think there's going to be another album tied into this. One of my favorite theories I've seen with this so far is that every song is sort of a tribute to other artists, such as Man at the Garden being, you know, a sort of tribute to Nas, Reincarnated, obviously Pac, Heart Part 6, more so Absol, you know, so on and so forth, so much, you know. The point being, music is something that really needs to sit with you and really simmer. I can listen to an album and not catch something about it until a whole year later, you know, so all I can tell you is that I just look forward to talking about it more at the end of the year. And now the video comes to a close for real this time. Kendrick Lamar is one of my favorite artists of all time. He is the one who seriously puts up a fight with Outkast for my favorite rap/hip-hop act of all time. He has made some of my favorite songs and albums of all time. He is an artist that I'm always excited to hear more from. Kendrick is like me in the sense of how deeply he cares about music. You've heard me say it so often. This is an art form, and Kendrick really treats it as such. He carefully crafts his music, from the themes to the sequencing to connecting threads across albums. He is a master at his craft, and I don't have enough good things to say about him, just like with the Outkast video. I usually hate bringing up numbers, whether it's music, wrestling, just everything. I hate when numbers are brought up. I hate when all that stuff is brought up, you know, because the true focus should always be on the content and whether one personally enjoys it or not. But I think the fact that Good Kid, M.A.A.d City released 12 years ago and has never left the Billboard 200 since its debut is a testament to how timeless Kendrick Lamar's music is. And I believe the same thing can be said for Damn, which was released 7 years ago. You can have your own opinions on Kendrick Lamar, but to me, he is one of the greatest of all time and has made music that will be remembered for generations. But with all that being said, as it stands, my current ranking for Kendrick Lamar's discography goes as follows. Section 80 at last, though I believe it is underrated. Followed by Damn, as much as I love its overall theme. Then Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, again mainly due to its length. GNX, West Coast Bias. To Pimp a Butterfly. And of course, Good Kid, M.A.A.d City at first. It is my favorite album of his, and it isn't close to me. Keyword there though. Me. I know I say this every time, but this one was a hard one to rank. Because I would go as far as to say that if I were to like rank on numbers base, I don't know if there's an album here lower than an 8.5 to me. They each have their flaws. Like I said, Section 80, early Kendrick, trying to find his sound, trying to find what works. But again, I still love it, man. He does a lot of great work on that record. Damn, great theme, some banger songs. Some stuff still doesn't click with me though. Mr. Morale, like I mentioned, too long. Could have cut some songs, even if they do contribute to the overall theme. There's just I felt it could have been condensed a bit better. GNX, still new, so maybe my only critique is that I just don't like one or two songs, you know. To Pimp a Butterfly is great, but there's definitely more of a focus on the message, and again, it isn't a bad thing, but it just kind of lessens the replay value with certain tracks, as you know, the focus is on the message rather than the instrumentation or overall production. The production is great on that, don't get me wrong, but there's a couple tracks on there don't really have that great of replay value compared to others. And then Good Kid, M.A.A.d City. Wait, are you sitting there waiting, expecting me to have something bad to say about Good Kid, M.A.A.d City? This is almost as perfect an album as you can get. This record is a Drake feature away from being in Hybrid Theory or AT Aliens conversations, and even then, I can just find the Poetic Justice with no Drake version on YouTube, man. You can call it bias. You can say I'm glazing. You can say whatever you want, man. I love that record and always will, man. Good Kid, M.A.A.d City is one of my favorite records of all time. Near perfection, you know. And with that all being said, I close this video. Up there with my year-end reviews and the Utami EO video I did earlier this year, just in terms of the sheer amount of effort I've put into this. 42-page script. Started it all the way back in June. I started this script in LA and finish it now in my new home. I'm glad I took the time. I'm glad I put this much effort. I thank you all for your patience, because I mentioned that I was going to be doing this at the end of the Dua Lipa discography review all the way back then, and it's been this long to finally get it. Thank you to Kendrick, man. Your music just has such a profound effect on my life. Such great music. You're really making it difficult when it comes to the Outkast discussions, man, because I mean, the one thing that's always going to hold Outkast back is what, 6-7 records? How many records that they have in total? 6-7? I always forget how many records they had in total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 records in total, I think is what it is. 6 studio albums. Kendrick's right there with 6 studio albums. He still has time to release more, so it'll be interesting what happens at the end of Kendrick Lamar's career, where I rank him and Outkast together. But man, he's making those discussions difficult for me. And, you know, to end all the yapping, if you stuck around this long, thank you for listening to me ramble on about one of my favorite artists of all time, Kendrick Lamar.